It seems that for console and controller players, there's been a lot of debate around the performance of The Last Word. Currently, I think The Last Word, in my opinion, feels like a weapon that greatly rewards a player with good aim and a disciplined trigger finger. In this video, I'll be sharing tips that, from my experience, has helped me become quite confident with The Last Word and has helped me be successful with it, and hopefully this might help you as well. Everything in this video is specifically catered towards controller players. I myself am a controller player, but there are a few things that can maybe be applied to MK as well. I'll be going over anything in my experience that I have to offer when using The Last Word in ADS, hipfire, talking about the best exotics to pair with it, and because it's a hot topic of debate right now, some samples side by side of controller recoil, mouse and keyboard recoil, controller recoil with console FOV, controller recoil with a more PC generic FOV, and D1 versus D2 recoil as well. Apologies for the long intro. Let's get into it. Firstly, with The Last Word, I'd highly recommend learning your optimal engagement range. The Last Word's a weapon that is quite punishing for challenging outside of your engagement range. Of course, it has a lot of recoil, but not only that, outside of its 20 to 22 meter range, it immediately sees a change in time to kill, at least against 5 resilience guardians, so middle resilience. So I think it's best to really try and stick to the 20 meter optimal range of this weapon. While using The Last Word in aim down sights, I very rarely full auto the weapon, maybe only in very close range, and I tap the trigger more so for more control over its rate of fire. The first 2 shots seem to be the most accurate and have the most bullet magnetism, and it seems like after firing 2 rapid shots, it maybe feels like there's some sort of bloom effect or inaccuracy, but I can't really quantify this. It's just by feeling. While firing ADS, I typically try and fire 1 to 2 shots at a time, firing more so at around 150 RPM, maybe 180 RPM, in an attempt to try and manage the recoil a little bit easier and mitigate the bloom. Also, when firing ADS, I recommend aiming for the body, maybe the upper torso type area, to give yourself some room for the recoil to move up to the head a little bit, and it seems like within 20 meters, firing at the torso and up will usually result in a headshot most of the time. I think a very good discipline to learn with The Last Word is pacing your shots based on the proximity of your target and not spam firing. To further the target, perhaps shoot at a slower rate of fire, manage the recoil, manage the bloom a little bit, and as they come closer, you have more opportunity to fire at a faster rate of fire, so you can accelerate your rate of fire as they move closer towards you. Not to repeat myself, but again, aiming center mass isn't a bad thing. It usually gets your headshots, or at least landing the shot, because remember, a 4 shot to the body is still a 0.8 second time to kill, which is very competitive with most weapons' optimal time to kill. When shooting in ADS, The Last Word has a really consistent recoil pattern, but it's got a lot of kick between each shot, which is a good thing because that means pulling down the trigger, maybe pulling down more aggressively than you'd anticipate, actually counteracts a lot of the recoil and makes it a bit easier to manage. Learning the muscle memory of how to control the recoil is something you'll just grow over time, I think, and get more confident with over time. For me, I had to pull down on the right stick more than I actually anticipated, and actually what I do is kind of develop a muscle memory to quickly flick for the head, but every time I shoot, as soon as I shoot, very drastically pull down to counter the recoil for the next shot and hold my target acquisition. Cool Guy, another YouTuber, has a fantastic video talking about some tips on how to use The Last Word in it, and he described it as you almost have to slice it down. You want to slice the recoil down, and that's how I would describe it as well. Let's talk about using The Last Word while hip firing now, though. I think full auto fire is far more viable when hip firing since there's very little recoil. Truth be told, personally, I still like to tap just to have a little bit more control over the rate of fire, landing my shots and placing them a little bit better, but you can full auto if that makes it easier for you. While using The Last Word, I very much recommend hip firing the majority of the time. There's a lot less recoil, it's very, very vertical and consistent. In my opinion, it's a lot more controllable. I think this is the main focus of the weapon, obviously, as well with the exotic perk fitting that. Of course, landing your hipfire shots will activate the fanfire buff, which makes landing continuous shots afterwards much easier, with what seems to be similar accuracy to ADS, without needing to manage the high recoil of ADS. I do think it's important to aim for center mass generally while hip firing, at least maybe until landing a few shots to activate the fanfire buff, but going for that 4-shot kill again isn't a bad thing. While hip firing though, you still have the odd chance of a bullet being off and not in the center of the hip fire if you don't have the buff active. So that's why I'd recommend aiming for center mass for the most part. I know that sometimes it can be a little weird or difficult to aim accurately while hip firing with a controller, and for that reason what I do is I actually use my character's movement, so the left stick, to aim while hip firing to make slight movements and try and follow my target. And of course with that I'd add that maybe finding a mobility level that helps you aim best and most comfortably might be beneficial. On the topic of movement, I think while hip firing you have a little bit more freedom than ADS with your movement. So what I like to do is I like to do a single jump once in a while to just be a little unpredictable, or throw a crouch in to steady my shot a little bit. I speak for myself here, but I think there's some other controller players that maybe could relate to this. I think that while hip firing is a little more difficult or feels a little bit more unreliable to snap to targets than ADS at least. So what I started doing and found a lot of success with was ADSing and snapping to my target, putting a shot in, maybe two, then releasing the ADS and just continuously hip firing afterwards. And I find this to work out for me the majority of the time, and I'm pretty confident in using the last word like this. To mention some good exotics that I think pair pretty well with the last word, on the Hunter I think Dragon Shadow is great, gives you increased draw speed, handling, and reload speed. Not to mention reloads your weapons when you dodge, so it's pretty great. Lucky Pants are very, very good if you find that you're having trouble with the bloom. This might help you. It has decreased bloom after drawing your weapon for 5 seconds, so a pretty decent period of time. And not only that, it has instant draw time when you pull out your last word, like faster than Dragon Shadow, faster than Quick Draw, literally instant draw time. It's pretty crazy. But the only thing to this is it doesn't work when you're coming out of a sprint, so you need to be walking and then it'll draw instantly. For the Warlock, the Ophidian aspects do something similar to Dragon Shadow. They give you increased draw speed, handling, and reload speed active all the time, but they're not as significant of an effect. The Lunafaction boots are a cool choice for a niche fun playstyle. With an Empowering Rift, you get an increased range up to 44 meters before seeing any damage drop off, and a time to kill of 1 crit to body rather than 3 crit, which is pretty cool. The transversive steps, though, I think are all around my best pick for Warlocks. The sprint to reload effect on them actually keeps the fanfire buff active even though you are reloading the weapon, which is really advantageous, I think, and allows you to fanfire a lot easier and more reliably. On Titan, I really like the Lion Rampants. You get very accurate hipfire while jumping, and this works with a fanfire buff as well. So again, this really doubles down on your hipfire effect. So guys, that's everything I have to offer from what's helped me in being successful with the last word. I hope this is beneficial for you, and if you have any pointers, if there's anything that's helped you, because this is a weapon that's so dependent on feel and you can use it in different ways, put it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your suggestions. As promised, at the end here, I'm going to have some visual comparison for you guys, just to draw your own conclusions from. But other than that, as per the usual, you can find me on Twitch if you'd like, twitch.tv/Drewskis, link in the description. If not though, that's a-okay. Thanks for watching guys, hope this helped, and I'll catch you guys later.